Good evening and welcome to BBC News. After a bruising encounter in Brussels, the Prime Minister says she still believes she can get extra assurances from EU leaders to get her Brexit withdrawal agreement through Parliament. EU leaders say they'll offer no renegotiation but will offer what they call further clarifications on the Irish backstop, which aims to avoid barriers to trade on the island of Ireland. Theresa May was filmed having a heated discussion with the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, during which she accused him of saying her latest proposals are nebulous, something he's denied. Our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports.
A bad omen, a bitter morning, for more than one reason. The Prime Minister came to Brussels hunting concessions from the EU.
Does the EU like your plan, Prime Minister?
But they didn't just say no. One of their top politicians said she didn't even know what she wanted. She was nebulous, leading this private, careful politician to show real anger. "Did you call me nebulous?" she seems to say to Jean-Claude Juncker. He grasping her arm. The microphones may be off, but you can see exactly what went on. The Dutch Prime Minister comes along to try to make peace. Later, she had not forgotten the accusation.
I was crystal clear about the assurances which are needed on the backstop, having heard the views of MPs in the House of Commons. I reiterated that it is in the interests of the EU, as well as the UK, to get this over the line.
EU leaders had said she would not get those concessions on the so-called backstop. She begged to differ.
My discussions with colleagues today have shown that further clarification and discussion following the Council's conclusions is in fact possible.
You looked very angry when you were speaking to Jean-Claude Juncker earlier today. What did you say to him, and did he admit that he had called you nebulous? And secondly, the summit conclusions suggest the EU is not willing to budge, but you appear to be suggesting that they might. Can you tell us more about what they've said to you about their willingness to move? Because if Parliament won't budge and the EU won't budge, is it time for you to budge?
Well, first of all, I had a robust discussion with Jean-Claude Juncker. I think that's the sort of discussion you're able to have when you've developed a working relationship and you work well together. What came out of that was his clarity that actually he'd been talking, when he used that particular phrase, he'd been talking about a general level of debate. We can look at this issue of further clarification, and that has been something I've been discussing with a number of EU leaders. So we will be working expeditiously over the coming days to seek those further assurances that I believe MPs will need.
You might wonder what exactly has been going on with these negotiations. What are the misunderstandings in the relations between the EU and the Prime Minister? What has the President of the European Commission really been up to since that row?
We were not dancing. She thought that I did criticize her by saying yesterday night that the British position was nebulous. I did not refer to her, but to the overall state of the debate in Britain. And in the course of the morning, after having checked what I said yesterday night, she was kissing me.
We have treated Prime Minister May with a much greater empathy and respect than some British MPs, for sure.
We have to bring down the temperature. And these attacks coming from Westminster against Europe, against the European Commission, will not be responded in the same way by the European Commission and by the European Union. Although I would like to do it.
On and off the stage, the message from the EU is clear. They promise they'll do a trade deal as quickly as possible so the backstop's never needed. But that cannot mean changing what's already been agreed.
We will not renegotiate it and we do not want to reopen it. But Theresa is of course a tough negotiator, and there's a lot of understanding also for what UK wants. But I think we have to find a way to deal with each other. I think that the current deal is a good one for both sides.
And hearing what's been said in Brussels back in Westminster, That just won't wash with MPs who are demanding new legal guarantees.
To coin a phrase, it was a bit nebulous. She hasn't provided any new guarantees at all about the withdrawal agreement or specifically the backstop. So she's been to the European Council, she's expressed her concerns, and they've given her absolutely nothing.
We know the answer to the question whether there's going to be changes, and it's no. What we need is for this vote to be put next week, for us to vote on it, and then for Parliament to take control of the process.
The Prime Minister leaves here with a big problem. Remember, she kept her job in part this week because she promised she could get more compromise from her fellow EU leaders. But she's left tonight with assurances that there could be more conversations, and that simply might not be concrete enough to protect her in a hostile environment at home.
Expectations even yesterday were of more positive promises, but bumpy late-night talks diluted results. The cold truth is the lack of trust at Westminster is felt 200 miles away. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Brussels.
Our Europe correspondent Damien Grammaticus has been following developments in Brussels, and earlier he told us just how unlikely it was for the Prime Minister to get any changes to her deal.
I think the leaders were very clear in what they said. They said no new negotiations that would in any way fundamentally alter the legal text that they have spent almost 2 years agreeing with the UK. What they might do is offer some clarifications, but, and there's a big but here, there is no ongoing process to address that. There is no negotiation, there is no upcoming planned meeting of new summit of EU leaders that would have to sign that off. And in fact, this summit that we've just had considered the question of opening up some way of trying to address these questions that the UK has, and they decided not to proceed with that. And that was because they spent an hour talking with Theresa May directly. And the interesting thing is this is the first time in the entire Brexit process that she and the 27 other leaders have sat face to face and discussed things back and forth. And they asked her some very direct questions. They were asking her what she was seeking and how that would help her get a deal through Parliament, and then crucially also what sort of relationship she envisaged in future for the UK, how close it would be with the EU. Would it be a customs union? Would it be something different? And they did not feel her answers were sufficiently clear. So I think their feeling was that it was little point in them giving what they would view as concessions at this point for her to take back to Parliament without any guarantee that that would secure the deal. Because what they don't want to do, as the Irish Prime Minister made very clear, is he said we can't carry out an international negotiation by agreeing something a fortnight ago, which is what they did here in Brussels, have the Prime Minister back now 2 weeks later seeking concessions and have that sort of chipping away process going on. So the EU at the minute simply, I think, saying it's now up to the UK. If it wishes to put new proposals on the table, it can, but the EU leaders will wait and see.
Damien Grammaticus in Brussels. A rally is being held tonight by the pro-Brexit group Leave Means Leave. Nigel Farage there is on the stage and speaking to those who are gathered there. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley is close by to that rally, and we can join him now. Nick, first of all, tell us what the message is from this rally, particularly in light of what we've been witnessing this week.
Well, you heard Laura talk about the lack of trust in Westminster for some of what Theresa May has been saying recently. Nowhere is that lack of trust more clear than in this room tonight. I must say I think it's unlikely that she'll be able to win over some of the people here, because this is the staunchest Brexiteers, the ones who are most angry about what the government has put on the table, and in many ways it shows the ways in which party lines have become blurred on this issue. You have the former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, you have 2 Labour MPs here, you have the Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg addressing MPs as well. One of the biggest challenges Theresa May is going to face if she's going to persuade Parliament to get behind whatever it is she gets assurance-wise from the EU on the Irish backstop issue is getting the DUP back on side. From what we've heard from Sammy Wilson, the DUP's Brexit spokesman tonight, that is a colossal task because he's talking about this half in, half out deal as he sees it being a betrayal of democracy. Very little for Theresa May to take heart from what he had to say. On the Labour side, Kate Hoey, the veteran Brexiteer Labour MP, saying that MPs are trying to do everything they can to thwart the UK leaving the European Union, getting stuck into Jeremy Corbyn for his approach, even accusing the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, of aiding Remainers trying to stop Brexit in recent weeks. We even had John Longworth, he is the former director of the British Chamber of Commerce, calling the Prime Minister a deceitful quisling. It's a sign, I think, of some of the intense anger in the Brexit debate at the moment. Some people being absolutely furious that they think that what was voted for in 2016 isn't being honoured with what the Prime Minister is proposing. And it's also a sign of the colossal, huge, gargantuan task that Theresa May has if she's going to do what she said on Wednesday when she won that confidence vote that she wants to do, which is start to unite her party, unite Parliament and ultimately unite the country behind what she's trying to do.
Nick, thank you very much. Nick Eardley in central London. The European Commission has confirmed that the long-term arrangements for British visitors to the European Union after Brexit. They will have to sign up online and pay €7 for a permit to travel to the EU, which is valid for 3 years. Joining us now, Simon Calder, travel editor of The Independent, who has spent the last 3 years watching developments on the new scheme, and on it goes, Simon.
Well, yes.
How expected was this this new arrangement then?
For anybody who cared to spot what the European Commission has been working on since well before the EU referendum, it was frankly obvious. All we have had today is a tweet from Natasha Berthaud, who's Jean-Claude Juncker's press spokesman, saying, yes, we will certainly be third country nationals who will sign up for ETIAS, as it's called. Yeah, since early in 2016, they've been working on this with no thought at all for Brexit. This is simply something where the European Union felt we have to have some kind of online system, as America does and Canada, Australia, many other countries are getting, so that we find out more about people before they simply turn up at the airport or the seaport and say, we're here.
How will it work?
OK, well, you're going to have to pay, as you say, €7, as long as you don't get scammed by one of the many sites which no doubt will be set up, as they are for American and Turkish and everybody else's visas. You'll need to put in all kinds of details. Now, they say it's a simple form. I'm not sure people would agree with that. There's all sorts of questions about health, about your education, your employment, and that's really only the first stage. We're kind of... I suppose the phrase would be giving back control. At the moment, you turn up with your passport at a EU border point, all they can do is check that it's you on your passport, they've got to let you in. We'll be in the position now of having applied online, having been given permission, that's not to enter the EU, it's to be allowed to get on a plane or a boat or whatever to go there. Once you get there, then they may or may not decide to let you in. Of course, overwhelmingly they will, but there's no certainty as there is at the moment.
It's a bit like the American ESTA, isn't it, if you want to go to the United States? How similar will it be?
Oh, it will be very similar, perhaps a little less onerous. The questions, I haven't seen the full set yet because they haven't yet been developed. And of course, this isn't coming into effect on the 30th of March as soon as we've left. It won't be probably for another 3 years that it actually takes effect, and even then there will be a kind of a soft launch. So they'll say for a few months, we really want you to get one, but we'll still consider you if you don't, and then it will be a hard line, you've got to get one now.
What will it be like then, crossing into the EU from outside the border?
Well, it will be very, very different. No fast track for us anymore. As I mentioned, there won't be the opportunity to just say, you've got to let me in. They might ask you, well, how are you going to support yourself when you're here, etc. And also, you're going to find that well, the lines will be longer, and you're going to have the validity of your passport checked. It will need to run for at least another 3 months after you plan to leave. At the moment, you can turn up and it's valid until the day of your passport's expiry.
That's the blue passport, of course. Simon Calder from The Independent, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. We'll find out how this story is covered in tomorrow's front pages at 10:40 and 11:30 this evening in the papers. Our guests joining us tonight are Joe Twyman, Director of the polling organisation Delta Poll, and political correspondent from the London Evening Standard, Kate Proctor. The headlines on BBC News. Theresa May insists she's confident she can still steer her Brexit deal through Parliament, despite leaving the EU summit in Brussels without the reassurances she needs. A baby has died after being attacked by 2 dogs in the family home when he was just 2 weeks old. President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has said the president knew it was wrong to order the illegal payments of hush money to 2 women who alleged affairs with him. Sport now, full roundup from the BBC Sports Centre with Ben.
Marty, many thanks indeed. The anti-discrimination group FAIR says that some fans are using the political atmosphere as cover for their own prejudice. It comes as Chelsea condemn anti-Semitic chanting in last night's Europa League match, saying the minority of fans have shamed the club. But Pavel Klemenko believes the media and the political uncertainty are contributing to such incidents.
When it comes to English football, it is still far from inclusive and welcoming as it is, celebrated sometimes. So these elements are still there, and we see the increase in the number of groups that are using football as a tool for their propaganda of hate. And I think it is definitely connected to the political developments and the type of language the media also uses.
Now, on the pitch, it's 3rd meets 5th in the Championship tonight, with both Sheffield United and West Brom aiming to bolster their chances of Premier League football that next season. A 7:45 kick-off at Bramall Lane. Already, David McGoldrick has given the home fans something to cheer about, giving Sheffield United the lead on 12 minutes. Victory would put pressure on Leeds and Norwich above them. In the Scottish Premiership, Hearts can go level with leaders Celtic with a win at Livingston tonight. Ryan Hardy has already hit the post in the opening 5 minutes for Livingston. Dimitri Mitchell, on loan from Manchester United, has hit the frame of the goal for the visitors as well, but it remains goalless. Around half an hour gone in that one. Mo Salah has won the BBC African Footballer of the Year award again. He scored 41 goals so far in 2018 for club and country and was voted favourite by you, ahead of 4 others on the shortlist. Salah beat Mehdi Benashir, Kalidou Koulibaly, Sadio Mane and Thomas Partey to the prize.
Great feeling, I would like to win it also next year, so I'm looking forward from now. But, it's a great feeling to win another award 2 years in a row, so happy to win it. Each moment I feel like I'm scoring goals, helping the team to get the points, to be top in the league, and that's always great feeling.
Well, arguably the game of the weekend in the Premier League sees leaders Liverpool host Manchester United. Liverpool 16 points clear of their rivals after just 16 games. And although they spent £100 million more than United in the summer, Jose Mourinho says it's not just a lack of investment that is preventing his team from challenging for top honours.
It's not just about spending money and reinforcing the squad. A football team is more than that. A football team is not just about spending the money. Football team is a little bit like a house too. A house is not just about buying new furniture. You have to do work in the house, and when the house is ready, then you buy the furniture, you spend money in the best possible furniture, and then you are ready to live in an amazing house.
Premiership runners-up Exeter Chiefs could go out of Europe tonight. They know only a win will do against Gloucester in the Champions Cup. They've lost 2 and drawn 1 of their 3 games so far to sit bottom of Pool 2. It's going OK for them so far. They have a 7-5 lead over Gloucester at Kingsholm in a tight game. Elsewhere in Belfast, Ulster host Scarlets and have a slender 3-0 lead over their Welsh opponents. Now it's the opening day of the Track Cycling World Cup in London at the Lee Valley Velo Park. Already there's been British success in the paracycling events for Jodie Cundy, Neil Facci and Kadina Cox. A hugely impressive ride earlier as well from Great Britain's women's team pursuit, with Laura Kenny, Katie Archibald, Mia Evans and Eleanor Dickinson, with the unusual sight of actually catching the world champions, the USA, within 3 kilometres of the 4K race. They won gold to add to their success in Berlin a fortnight ago. That is all your sport for now, Martine.
Ben, thank you very much. A baby has died after he was attacked by 2 dogs at his family's home in Cambridgeshire. Reuben McNulty, who was 5 weeks old, was taken to hospital after the attack in Yaxley last month, but has died of his injuries. John Donnison reports.
Reuben McNulty was only born last month, still just tiny and vulnerable. On the 18th of November, police were called to this flat on a quiet suburban estate in Yaxley near Peterborough. Officers say Reuben had been attacked by 2 Staffordshire Bull Terriers. He was treated for head injuries at Adam Brooks Hospital in Cambridge, but died yesterday.
Reuben McNulty was just 2 weeks old when he was attacked by the 2 dogs in the upstairs flat behind me. Neighbours have described the dogs as being docile. One neighbour said it was a freak accident.
Police say a 31-year-old man and a 28-year-old woman who were arrested on suspicion of child neglect have been released under investigation. Locals say that Reuben's parents, Daniel McNulty and Amy Litchfield, are the 2 people questioned and released by police. Officers say the death is not being treated as suspicious and the 2 dogs have been destroyed. John Donnison, BBC News, Yaxley.
A 4th person has died following the gun attack in the French city of Strasbourg on Tuesday. A 5th victim remains in a coma and 11 others have been wounded. The killer, Sherif Shekat, was shot dead last night after opening fire on police officers who tracked him down. Donald Trump's former lawyer says the president directed him to pay money to 2 women who alleged having sexual affairs with him. In an exclusive interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, Michael Cohen, who's been sentenced to 3 years in jail, said Mr. Trump acted because he was very concerned the allegations would become public.
He directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters, including the one with McDougal, which was really between him and David Pecker, and then David Pecker's counsel. I just reviewed the documents in order to protect him. I gave loyalty to someone who truthfully does not deserve loyalty.
He was trying to hide what you were doing, correct?
Correct.
And he knew it was wrong?
Of course.
When you think about it, when you look back, did you know what you were doing?
I'm angry at myself because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I stood up before the world yesterday and I accepted the responsibility for my actions. The actions that I gave to a man who, as I also said in my elocution, I was loyal to. I should not be the only one taking responsibility for his actions.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
Michael Cohen speaking to ABC News. Temperatures are dropping, but new figures from the Charity Crisis show that homelessness is still rising, with more than 24,000 people expected to sleep rough this Christmas. In the capital, the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has announced that emergency cold weather shelters will be open for the first time across London if the temperature is set to drop below 0 anywhere in the capital. Alex Bushell reports.
Take one bin out, and then I'll sleep on this side here. Literally, right here. And that is warm enough for me for the night.
Mark, which isn't his real name, has been homeless since he was released from Wormwood Scrubs in October. Since then he's been sleeping rough. Every night this is his bedtime routine, bedding down by the bins under a rubbish chute in a tower block.
So I've got from 1 o'clock until give or take 5, 6 in the morning, maybe, when people are going for work, because that's when some of them take rubbish out.
Talk me to the smell. I mean, this is...
Well, it's terrible. It's not even a dog won't live in there.
He can't sleep on the night buses as he can't afford the fares. That's why he says many like him will commit crime to get a short stretch in prison over the winter and in the warmth.
I'm not, a prolific offender, but if it has to, if it comes to me having getting a roof over my head for a few months, why not? Winter and autumn they're inside, and then spring they're out. That's how it is.
And what kind of offences are being committed, and how many people do you know do this?
Petty offences for them to get, even if they get a 6-month stretch, no problem.
Last night he was one of the lucky ones to grab a bed here. It's an emergency cold weather shelter opened by the Mayor once temperatures hit 0. This one is run by St Mungo's.
We welcome the rough sleeping strategy. It's a really good start. It's a really good start in the right direction.
Every year, someone like you tells me the same thing, that it's a good start, but government aren't doing enough.
I think what we're seeing on the streets is, you know, years and years and years of erosion of support services being taken away. Our organisation does a fantastic job dealing with the emergency, getting people off the streets. We're helping hundreds and hundreds of people off the streets all the time. I think the challenge is that more people keep coming onto the streets.
Which is why the Mayor's office has said that they're doing more to help those who need it.
When we came into office, there had to be a forecast of 3 consecutive nights of freezing temperatures before this emergency provision would open. And when we came into office, Sadiq said that was unacceptable, and he changed the policy so that now, whenever it's forecast to be freezing, even for one night, we open shelters in London.
The Mayor's critics say that that's all very well, but failure to address the housing crisis is making a bad situation even worse. For Mark, the rights and wrongs of government policy is of cold comfort as he faces Christmas on the streets.
Some of us are a bit unfortunate, you know, than others, and to the people at home, all I say is, you know, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and just keep blessed.
Alex Bushell reporting. A British yachtswoman whose boat capsized in a storm in the South Pacific 2,000 miles offshore has finally set foot on dry land in Chile. It's a week since she was rescued by a Chinese cargo ship. Susie Goodall had been competing in the solo Golden Globe Round the World race. Duncan Kennedy reports.
This is what relief looks like when you step ashore after surviving the drama of a mid-ocean crisis. No wonder the hug from Mum Brigitte and brother Tim meant Susie Goodall's ordeal was finally over.
Okay. All the best.
With just a medical checkup to go.
She is in a shock. Now she is stayed in a hospital for a medical assistant.
It was the wild seas of the Southern Ocean with its 7-metre waves that triggered the emergency last week. In sailing terms, Susie's yacht pitch-poled, meaning it somersaulted forward end over end, smashing the mast and leaving her stranded for more than 2 days.
The boat is destroyed. Inside and out is destroyed.
It took a crane from a passing freight ship to hoist her out of danger. Susie, who's 29, was the youngest competitor in this Golden Globe race before she hit the storm. But she trained here at the UK Sailing Academy on the Isle of Wight. This afternoon we showed her friends the moment she made it back to shore in Chile.
Wow.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Gives you goosebumps. Yeah.
Oh, it does.
Really pleased for Susie and especially her family. She's been through a real ordeal and experience and adventure over the last few weeks, so pleased that she's made it back safely.
Susie Goodall is the 3rd sailor to be rescued in this year's race, but now she's safe and heading home for Christmas. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Now it's time for a look at the weather forecast with Nick.
Hello. After a lull in the weather, we have to be prepared for some very active but also potentially very hazardous weather affecting parts of the UK during Saturday into early Sunday, with the Met Office amber warning for ice caused by freezing rain. Widespread ice could well be a very dangerous weather setup for some during Saturday. Heavy snow too, especially in Scotland, north of the Central Belt. It's rain that pushes into Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England going on into Saturday morning, accompanied by strengthening winds, gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour. Very wet Saturday here. All this wet weather pushing east into a cold air after a frosty start, and so the setup for freezing rain freezing instantly on contact with any frozen surfaces across the Midlands, Northern England and into Scotland during Saturday afternoon and into the evening. Very dangerous travel set up here, and heavy snow developing too, especially in Scotland, north of the Central Belt. Very messy travel situation as Saturday comes to a close.
This is BBC News. I'm Martine Croxall. The headlines. Theresa May has insisted she's confident she can steer her Brexit deal through Parliament despite leaving the EU summit in Brussels without the assurances she needs.
I reiterated that it is in the interests of the EU as well as the UK to get this over the line. A disorderly Brexit would be good for no one.
A baby has died after being attacked by 2 dogs in the family home when he was just 2 weeks old. President lawyer Michael Cohen has said the president knew it was wrong to order the illegal payments of hush money to 2 women who alleged affairs with him. Mr. Trump denies asking Cohen to make the payments. Susie Goodall, the British yachtswoman whose boat capsized in a solo round-the-world race, has arrived back on land in Chile.
Swing. Good, you're doing it. Double tap to release and whip it out again. Okay.
And coming up, a world with multiple spider people. We'll hear what Mark Kermode thought of the latest Spider-Man and all the other new releases in the film review. More on today's main story, and Theresa May appears to have had a challenging day in Brussels. She was filmed having what she described as a robust conversation with Jean-Claude Juncker, and she was told there would be no renegotiation of her Brexit deal. Nevertheless, she told a press conference that she thought it would still be possible to get the assurances MPs here need to back her Brexit deal.
At this council meeting, I've held a series of discussions with my fellow leaders on the Brexit deal, and I was crystal clear about the assurances which are needed on the backstop, having heard the views of MPs in the House of Commons. I reiterated that it is in the interests of the EU, as well as the UK, to get this over the line. A disorderly Brexit would be good for no one. At 27 level, the EU have published a series of conclusions. The EU made clear that it is their firm determination to work speedily on a future relationship or alternative arrangements which ensure no hard border by the 31st of December 2020, so that the backstop will not need to be triggered. If the backstop was ever triggered, it would apply only temporarily, and the EU would use its best endeavours to negotiate and conclude expeditiously a subsequent agreement that would replace the backstop. That the EU stands ready to embark on preparations so that negotiations on the future partnership can start as soon as possible. As formal conclusions, these commitments have legal status and therefore should be welcomed. As I've always said, the guaranteed way of avoiding the backstop is to have the future partnership in place by the time the implementation period is over. The EU is very firmly committed to this course. But MPs will require further assurances, and I've discussed that this morning with my EU partners, including Presidents Tusk, Juncker and others. I note that there has been reporting that the EU is not willing to consider any further clarification. The EU is clear, as I am, that if we are going to leave with the deal, this is it. But my discussions with colleagues today have shown that further clarification and discussion following the Council's conclusions is, in fact, possible. There is work still to do, and we will be holding talks in coming days about how to obtain the further assurances that the UK Parliament needs in order to be able to approve the deal. I say again, it is in the overwhelming interest of all our people, in the EU and the UK, to get this done, and as quickly as possible.
In the last hour, we spoke to journalists from Ireland, Poland and France to get an idea of how today's events in Brussels are going down across the EU. Well, now it's the turn of Spain, Italy and Germany to find out more. We're joined by Miguel Ancho Morado, writer and journalist in Madrid, Silvia Sciorrilli Borelli, who is Italy correspondent for Politico Europe, and Birgit Jennen, German government reporter for Bloomberg. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Birgit, first of all, how much understanding is there amongst the German public of the Brexit issue?
Well, I mean, I think actually that the understanding hasn't been changed since the Brexit vote, because the debate hasn't been going on in the public as much as it has been going on in Britain. So the overwhelming feeling is still that it really is a shame that Britain is leaving, and there is a kind of bewilderment that it has turned into so much chaos. And the German public is watching the debate in Britain and is actually just waiting for the result.
Miguel Ancho, how sorry will the Spanish be to see Britain leave?
I think very sorry. Spain is, for historical reasons, a very pro-European country, to the point that even the populist parties we have in our country, there is one which is far left and the other one is far right, even those are not Eurosceptic. So Spain, yes, will feel the loss of Britain, not least because more practical reasons. Spain has a very important trade relationship with the UK. There are lots of, as it's well known, lots of Britons who live in Spain, more than 300,000, and there are lots of Spaniards working in the UK. So yes, it's something that is of serious concern in Spain.
Sylvia, what's the Italian view? I suppose it depends whether you're resident in Italy or resident in the UK.
Well, definitely, and I think the situation is very similar to Germany and Spain. However, what might be a little different is that the Italians, both the government and the Italian people, sympathize with Theresa May and the Brexit cause a bit more than other EU leaders in other EU countries, probably because Rome is happy there's another elephant in the room at these summits. Italians are sympathetic to the fact that there's chaos in the British Parliament, which we've never seen from here, actually, and is basically regular business in Italy. So I think, especially now in Italy, having a national Eurosceptic government, it's crucial that this Brexit deal gets through on one hand, but on the other, I think it really plays into the hands of the Eurosceptics and of the Italian government, because they're going to blame Brussels for having forced Britain to leave and for having been very harsh on Britain. So I think it's a little different here because of the sentiment and the Euroscepticism on the rise in the country.
Birgit, given the how politically difficult immigration has been in Germany, where is the anti-EU sentiment most focused in terms of political groups there?
Well, it's not to be compared really to Britain. I mean, we have to keep in mind that Germany felt always really close to Britain and wanted to keep this relationship. So where is the anti-European sentiment focused? This is basically a phenomenon. In Germany, there isn't a strong anti-European sentiment. Even the far right, the AfD, which is the most populist and has risen from the issue of immigration, hasn't turned anti-European. They are also taking a somewhat pro-European stance. They're obviously not in line with the reforms, and they certainly don't want to deepen it, but they're not turning against it. So you do not see the same sentiment as in some other countries, and especially as in Britain, that the people and the politics has turned against Europe, despite the issue of immigration.
Miguel Ancho, we must, of course, mention Gibraltar. How likely do you think it will be that we're going to see increased tensions between Madrid and London over the rock?
Well, there's been some tension in the past few weeks when Spain thought that the agreement could favour the British position on Gibraltar, but then the Prime Minister of Spain threatened to veto this agreement. I don't think he was very determined to do that, but in any case it worked, and he got assurances that he thought were sufficient. So that is another reason why the Spaniards, together with the rest of the 27, do not want this agreement to be reopened and renegotiated, because in Madrid they fear that that would put Gibraltar again on the table. What will happen after Britain leaves? I think it will depend on this overall agreement that has to be still negotiated between the European Union and Britain. That is what will set the course for the future relationship between Spain and Gibraltar and Spain and the United Kingdom.
Sylvia, how helpful has the United Kingdom been to Italy when it's come to certain negotiations in the past within the EU? Because that will give us an indication of how much Italy will miss the UK leaving, I suppose.
Well, I guess the UK, especially on very important files like the single market and all the banking files and competition liberalizations, has been a key player on in Brussels. And of course, Italy doesn't have as much weight as Germany and France, or the UK for that matter. So, of course, with the UK out of the picture now, it means that France and Germany are likely to have a lot more power, and probably, especially considering Italy's current government, this won't be very helpful for the Italian cause.
Silvia Schiarelli Borelli in Rome, Birgit Jenen in Berlin, and Miguel Ancho Morado in Madrid. Thank you all very much. Adverts which show a woman being unable to park a car or a man struggling to change a nappy are to be banned from next year. Under a new rule drawn up by regulators, ads must not include gender stereotypes which are likely to cause harm or serious offence. This would also include any depiction of girls being less academic than boys. The Committee of Advertising Practice says it wants to call time on stereotypes that hold people and society back. We can speak now to Ali Fogg, the co-founder of the Men and Boys Coalition, and also joining us here in the studio is Olivia Dickinson, a campaigner for Let Toys Be Toys. Ali, Olivia, thank you very much for being with us this evening. Ali, first of all, how welcome are these new rules going to be?
I think they are generally welcome, yeah. I think the most important and significant change from our point of view is that, as well as clamping down a little bit further on the kind of portrayals of women, particularly sexual objectification kind of issues that have been talked about a lot, it makes quite clear that they're also concerned about the other side of things, which is the equally damaging portrayal of men as being useless slobs who won't help around the house, or who are only useful for mending cars and following a very kind of outdated and I think quite hackneyed and tired gender script. So it's a very welcome development, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, how long these stereotypes have been with us. Olivia, how relevant will these rules be to toys and how they're sold and marketed?
We're really pleased with the results of the guidance. We were part of the consultation 2 years ago. We think it could have gone a little bit further, but for now we're pleased that it's going to be meaning that if girls are portrayed as being less than boys, then that can be complained about in terms of toys.
You say you'd like them to have gone further. To what extent?
Only that at the moment it's about what's explicitly conveyed. So if it's rather than what's implicitly conveyed, or what might be there's sort of implicit exclusion. So we did a study of TV adverts about toys in 2015, and they show it's all boys or all girls. They never have boys together, for example, and so there's almost by implication it's saying this isn't for you if you're a girl, or this isn't for you if you're a boy, and we'd love to see a little bit more mixing up. So actually what we think is great about the guidance is it's a challenge to advertisers to just be a bit more imaginative and a bit less boring and lazy with stereotypes.
Ali, how subliminal are some of the messages that we get about what it is to be a man or a woman?
How subliminal. I think it's really interesting that advertising is a particularly sensitive media because you can choose which films you watch, or you can choose which TV shows you want to. If you wanted to turn on Family Guy, say, and watch a very extreme and at times quite offensive portrayal of gender roles, then that's a choice you make. But advertising, by and large, is something that's forced into your home, and you don't really have any choice. And it's very interesting to me, I think, that advertising to some extent follows what society and culture will do and how we expect men and women, boys and girls to behave. But it also drives that as well. And I think with respect to girls and boys toys, which we were talking about, one of the really interesting things that came out of the recent research that was done by the Advertising Standards Authority and other partners is that when parents were shown an advert featuring a little girl playing with Lego, they found it awkward and there's something wrong about it. And yet if you go back to the 1970s, it was quite common that Lego would advertise directly to girls, and no one seemed to mind then. So I think what's happened is in many ways we've gone backwards in our portrayals both of girls and boys, and I think advertising has not only reflected that, it's also helped to drive it. And while to a large extent I think what the new guidelines and the new rules are doing is largely catching up with where public opinion is. People by and large don't want to see this kind of tired and offensive stereotyping of men and women, and I think it's quite right that the rules have kind of just caught up with where British people are now.
Olivia, what examples have you seen of advertising which manages to steer clear of those gender stereotypes, and how refreshing are they?
So we do have some examples. There's a Nerf advert that's quite recent that actually shows boys and girls playing together, which is quite unusual.
Nerf?
Yeah, so
with
Nerf is the
Nerf guns with those sort of foam bullets.
So it used to be that there's one called Nerf Rebel that was marketed only to girls and only showed girls, and then the other Nerf guns were shown with only boys, but there's now one that has boys and girls playing together, and that it's accepted they would play together, and that girls are being active, because often what we find is a lot of the ads are showing girls in quite passive at-home sort of situations and not doing that active stuff.
There was nothing passive about my daughter in the midst of a Nerf gun battle with her daughter, with her brother, I can assure you. Absolutely. Olivia Dickinson from Let Toys Be Toys and Ali Fogg from Men and Boys Coalition. Thank you both for joining us this evening. This week on the Film Review, Mark Kermode joins me to discuss the latest cinema and DVD releases, including Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Mortal Engines and Lizzie.